Alright, so in this video I just want to do a quick tutorial on how to translate number 10 from chapter 20. It's kind of a longer sentence and a bit complicated, and I had a couple requests just to go over what exactly the translation is and how to go about understanding this one. So I'll just take it slow and do my best job to explain what's going on here. So let's break up this sentence into two, because off the bat, I think we can notice that there's a comma here for one that sort of splits it up. There's also a namque, which usually kind of explains what's going on in the previous sentence. So we'll go. So let's take care of the first part first, and then we'll see if that'll help us understand what's going on in the second half of the sentence. So this first half is introduced by Caesar. So Toti populo Romano sociisque omnibus laudandis est Caesar. So this is our vocative address. So, O Caesar, or Hey Caesar. And then we have our laudandis est, which is our passive periphrastic, or it is our gerundive, our use of the gerundive here. Occasionally this is also called the passive periphrastic tense, because periphrastic meaning that it makes use of both a form of sum and another participial form. So we also have seen this in a similar way to the future participle. So you could say something like that. That would be the active periphrastic. And there's also this sort of similar construction with the perfect passive. It's also could be the perfect passive periphrastic. So the basic distinction then is this: with the future participle, future active participle, we call it the active, and then with the gerundive and sum, we call it the passive periphrastic. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing, but I think it helps to kind of get a little more understanding of the wider context. But essentially what's going on here is we have the literal translation of this is you ought to be praised, because it is both this form of sum here, s, along with our gerundive here, which is masculine singular nominative. And it just has this kind of basic meaning: ought to be, or about to be, and then the passive form of our verb, praised. So ought to be praised. And then this is a particular sort of construction that's common with the gerundives, but instead of showing our agency with ob, which is what we're used to with passive verbs, we can actually just do it with the dative. And that is what is going on here. So we have Toti populo Romano sociisque omnibus. So these are all dative nouns and adjectives here, by the whole Roman people and all of the allies. You ought to be praised, O Caesar. So another way of referring to this is the gerundive of obligation. This is one of those key functions of the gerundive, and a very common way to see this taking place. So this is this first half of the sentence. So, hey Caesar, you ought to be, or you must, or should be praised by all the Roman people and all of their allies. And then we get into the second half. For, we could start at the beginning, or we could start with a verb. So I'll start first with just finding our main verb, which is down here at the end, auxisti. So this is our perfect active indicative. And then it is this isti ending, which is the second singular. It's really similar to istis, which is our second plural. But either way, it has this. The S there is the key to understanding that it's the second person right there. Okay, so, and the meaning of it is to increase. It's from Algeo. So you have increased, and then it's a normal transitive verb which takes an accusative direct object. So our next closest thing for the object is fines nostros. So you have increased our borders. And then we have this big gerundive phrase right here. Exercitu tam celeriter contra hostium acciam ducendo. So let's just break it down a little bit. We can maybe separate this stuff out. So we'll start first with just tam celeriter. So we know that this is sort of its own little thing. It's an adverbial phrase. So we'll just have that separate. And then we also have this contra acciam hostium thing. So we'll break this down too as a prepositional phrase. And then all that's left is our exercitu and ducendo on both ends. And then we have this nice phrase sandwiched in between. So exercitu is the ablative singular of exercitus. It's one of those fourth declension nouns. And ducendo is our gerundive. It looks a lot like the gerund right now, but the gerund and the gerundive look similar in the masculine. But it is adjectively modifying exercitu, so it is also this ablative singular. But if you recall, we have kind of a common additional use of the gerund that I'd like to review here, which is called the gerundive flip, or I think the textbook refers to it as the gerundive used in place for the gerund, which I think is exactly what's going on here. So if we want to just, I think the easiest way for understanding these sorts of constructions is just turning the phrase back into what it would be as gerund. And I think this will sort of explain exactly what's going on here. So if we keep the case of the gerund, so remember we keep the case, but when the gerund is turned into a gerundive, it takes the number and the number and the person of the noun. But we'll keep ducendo here because it reveals the function, which is by means of or because of. And then when it's just a gerund, it can also take a direct object. So the direct object then, instead of being in the ablative, we're going to use the accusative. So by leading the army so quickly against the battle line of the enemy. So this is essentially what's going on here, but occasionally, like we've seen a few times, and pretty often, this gerundive phrase, which makes the most sense for us in English, or this gerund phrase, which makes more sense to us, can also be translated can perhaps more idiomatically in Latin, but more confusing for us, be translated more naturally in Latin with this gerundive phrase. So exercitu ducendo then literally would mean by means of the army being led or about to be led, but it is really equivalent to this phrase up here. So I'm just going to kind of do this equal sign right here. So this is essentially what's going on here. For you have increased our borders by leading the army, or by the army being led so quickly against the border or against the battle line of the enemy. So this is our translation, and this is how to understand it grammatically. So hopefully that was helpful for you in understanding what's going on here. So thank you.